Hello and welcome. In this presentation, we will explore career development as a lifelong, identity-driven, and meaning-making process. Over the next 20 minutes or so, we will move through the major theories that anchor our field, examine how career intersects with identity and culture, and consider what all of this means for your work as counselors. My hope is that you leave with both a strong conceptual map and a renewed sense of why this work matters so much for the people we serve. Here is our roadmap. We will work through 5 chapters. We begin with the theoretical foundations of the field, from trait and factor models to contemporary constructivist and social justice frameworks. We then turn to career as a process of identity formation, including multicultural and indigenous perspectives. Our 3rd chapter examines career as meaning-making, the search for calling and purpose. In our 4th chapter, we consider adaptability and the transitions that mark every working life. We close with the implications for your practice. Notice how each chapter builds on the one before it. Let us begin with the central thesis. Career development is not a discrete event. It is an evolving, lifelong process through which individuals construct a vocational identity, make meaning of their work roles, and integrate their occupational lives with their broader sense of self. This review synthesizes theory and empirical scholarship across 3 intersecting dimensions: lifespan progression, identity formation, and meaning-making. You will see the major frameworks named here, from Super and Holland through Civikas and Bluestein. Hold these 3 dimensions in mind because they will organize everything that follows. Career is developmental, identity work, and a search for meaning. For much of the 20th century, career choice was framed as a single, bounded event. Frank Parsons, in 1909, asked people to match themselves to an occupation once and be done. Subsequent theorists challenged that static view. They proposed instead that careers unfold across an entire life, shaped by developmental maturation, social context, and the ongoing construction of personal meaning. 3 insights will recur throughout our discussion. First, career development is lifelong and developmental. Second, it is inseparable from identity formation. And third, it is fundamentally a meaning-making enterprise. Each of these reframes career development from a problem to be solved into a process to be supported. We turn now to our theoretical foundations. The field has evolved dramatically, from Parsons's foundational person-environment-fit logic to today's constructivist and social justice frameworks. 6 major frameworks anchor our work, and we will take each in turn: trait and factor models, Holland's RIASEC, Super's lifespan and life space theory, social cognitive career theory, career construction theory, the life design paradigm, and the psychology of working. As we move through them, notice how the field gradually widens its lens, from the individual in isolation toward the individual embedded in culture, context, and constraint. We start at the beginning. Parsons proposed that effective vocational choice requires 3 things: accurate self-understanding, knowledge of occupational requirements, and reasoned application of the 2. This person-environment-fit logic anchored the field for decades. Holland later refined it into the RIASEC model: 6 vocational personality types: realistic, investigative, artistic, social, enterprising, and conventional, each corresponding to a parallel work environment. His central proposition is that congruence between personality and environment yields greater satisfaction, stability, and performance. It is an elegant model, and it remains useful. We should remember, though, that it was developed primarily with white, middle-class Western samples, which limits its cross-cultural applicability. Donald Super gave us the first truly developmental theory of career. He described 5 life stages: growth in childhood, exploration in adolescence and early adulthood, establishment in the working 20s and 30s, maintenance in midlife, and disengagement in later years. His most crucial insight is this: career choices are acts of self-concept implementation. People seek roles that let them express who they are and who they are becoming. The life career rainbow reminds us that a person occupies many roles at once, as child, student, worker, citizen, and homemaker, with the salience of each shifting across the lifespan. When a client is dissatisfied, the misalignment is often between work and identity, not simply between skills and tasks. Social cognitive career theory applied Bandura's social cognitive theory to vocational psychology. It centers on three variables: self-efficacy, our judgment of our own capability; outcome expectations, what we anticipate will follow from our choices; and personal goals, our intentions to act. Self-efficacy and outcome expectations are substantially correlated, indicating that people expect good outcomes when they feel capable. For us as counselors, the most important contribution is this: SCCT explicitly accounts for contextual variables such as financial constraints, discrimination, lack of role models, and restricted educational access. Environmental barriers can prevent interests from ever becoming choices, and that is felt most acutely by marginalized clients. 25 years of research have extended this framework across diverse populations. With Mark Savickas, the field takes a constructivist turn. Career construction theory reconceives careers not as objective facts to be discovered through assessment, but as stories to be authored. It rests on three dimensions. Vocational personality is what an individual does, the Ryesak interests, now placed in a constructivist frame. Career adaptability is how individuals cope, as captured in the 4 C's: concern, control, curiosity, and confidence. And life themes are why a person pursues a particular path, the recurring preoccupations rooted in early experience. The career construction interview operationalizes this through early recollections, role models, favorite stories, and personal mottos, helping clients identify the central plot of their own life story and use it to guide their decisions. 2 contemporary frameworks extend this thinking. The life design paradigm responds to a world of work defined by instability, globalization, and nonlinear pathways. It moves beyond vocational guidance to help people design a meaningful life by constructing small stories, reconstructing them into a life portrait, and co-constructing intentions that move the story forward. Evaluations show it improves career adaptability, narrative identity, and vocational clarity. The Psychology of Working theory, from David Blostein, makes a pointed critique. Most dominant theories reflect the experiences of white, educated, middle-class people who enjoy real occupational latitude. This theory instead centers workers under constraint and necessity. Its key mediators are work volition, the perceived freedom to choose, and career adaptability. Work volition rises with freedom and falls with economic constraint and marginalization. Our second chapter turns to identity. The link between career and identity is nowhere more visible than in adolescence and emerging adulthood, though it continues across the whole lifespan. Erikson placed occupational identity at the heart of adolescent development, and Marcia's 4 identity statuses, diffusion, foreclosure, moratorium, and achievement, help predict career decision-making and satisfaction. Arnett's concept of emerging adulthood, roughly ages 18 to 29, describes a distinct period of exploration and instability in which career commitments shape decades of working life. And Super's maxi-cycles and mini-cycles remind us that we revisit our vocational self-concept at every major transition: job loss, mid-career change, parenthood, and retirement. Career identity is never finished. Identity development never happens outside of culture. Fuad and Byers-Winston's cultural context model shows that family obligation, collectivistic values, and experiences of racism and discrimination shape how people explore and commit to vocational identities. Race, ethnicity, and culture are not peripheral to career development. They are constitutive of it. Deemer and Bluestein found that critical consciousness, an awareness of the socio-political conditions that constrain opportunity, was positively related to vocational identity among economically marginalized urban adolescents. Among immigrant populations, those who maintain a strong ethnic identity while gaining fluency in the dominant culture, a pattern called integration, show clearer career identity than those facing assimilation pressure or marginalization. Multicultural individuals, as Martin and colleagues found, navigate cultural and career identity formation simultaneously, each shaping the other. This brings us to Indigenous models of career development, a topic close to my own work. Our dominant theories were built almost entirely within Western, individualistic frameworks that prize personal choice, linear progression, and self-actualization. Those assumptions are often incongruent with Indigenous worldviews. Juntunen and colleagues found that American Indian adults described career development and career in terms of family and community obligation, giving back to the tribal community, spiritual calling, and the inseparability of work from cultural identity. Asking an Indigenous client to articulate individual career goals apart from community is not only culturally incongruent, it can actively undermine the very meaning that the decision carries. Scholars such as McCormick call for models that center Indigenous epistemologies, relational ways of knowing, oral traditions, and land-based identity. Our third chapter takes up meaning-making. I want to pause on the phrase on this slide, because it captures the heart of it. Work is not just a job. It is a story we author. For many people, the deepest question is not only what they can do or where they will fit, but what their work means and what it is for. Let us look at how the field has tried to answer that. The idea of calling gives us a way to talk about meaning in work. Dick and Duffy define a calling as a transcendent summons, experienced as originating beyond the self, to approach a life role in a way oriented toward purpose and meaningfulness, with other-oriented values as the primary motivation. It has three components: a transcendent summons, a sense that the work is purposeful and contributes to others, and a pro-social motivation to benefit others. This builds on Rzeszniewski's foundational distinction among jobs, careers, and callings. People who experience their work as a calling report higher job satisfaction, work engagement, life meaning, well-being, and organizational commitment. Importantly for us, calling is relatively stable, yet it remains responsive to reflective intervention. That means our work with clients can genuinely shape it. Within career construction theory, meaning-making is not an add-on. It is the organizing principle. Savickas proposed that the self-author crafts a career narrative that transforms fragmented vocational experiences into a coherent life story, moving from small stories to a life portrait to future intentions. The empirical record supports the clinical value of this coherence. Hartung and Taber found narrative identity and career adaptability to be positively related, suggesting that people who construct coherent vocational stories are better equipped to navigate transitions. Cardoso and colleagues demonstrated that life design counseling significantly improved narrative identity clarity and career decisions self-efficacy compared to a waitlist control. Helping a client author a coherent story is therapeutic work, not merely reflective work. Two frameworks extend meaning into practice. Dick, Duffy, and Steger draw on positive psychology to name 6 application areas: strengths, utilization, positive emotions, and flow; gratitude, work hope, job crafting, and perceiving and living a calling. This expands our toolkit beyond deficit-focused intervention toward cultivating vocational flourishing. The Decent Work Framework from Bluestein and colleagues adds a necessary corrective. Decent work marked by physical safety, adequate pay, health care, family supportive policies, rest, value alignment, and meaningful contribution is a prerequisite for the kind of meaning-making that our theories often assume. When people lack access to decent work, their capacity to experience vocational meaning is constrained not by psychological deficit, but by structural inequity. That distinction should shape how we assess and how we advocate. Our fourth chapter focuses on adaptability. Career adaptability, introduced by Super and elaborated by Savickas, refers to the psychosocial resources people deploy to manage developmental tasks, vocational transitions, and work-related traumas throughout their careers. It has 4 dimensions, often called the 4 C's. Concern is future orientation and planning. Control is a sense of agency over one's career. Curiosity is the exploration of self and environment. And confidence is efficacy for career tasks and decisions. Rudolph and colleagues, in a meta-analysis of 130 studies, found career adaptability to be meaningfully associated with employability, vocational identity, occupational self-efficacy, job performance, and work engagement. Adaptability is an ongoing developmental resource, not merely a reaction to a single transition. Transitions are now the norm rather than the exception. The shift from industrial to post-industrial economies, alongside globalization and technological change, has made the nonlinear protean career the typical pattern. That means we will routinely support clients through identity disruption, meaning reconstruction, and adaptive coping. Schlossberg's transition theory offers a practical lens, the 4 S's: situation, the characteristics of the transition; self, the person's internal resources; support, their social resources; and strategies, their coping behaviors. We can use it to assess strengths and gaps. Research also consistently identifies narrative coherence and clarity of vocational identity as protective factors. People who can integrate past, present, and future into a meaningful story navigate transitions more successfully than those who experience their history as fragmented. This is the clinical case for narrative career counseling. Our final chapter gathers the implications for your practice. 4 commitments emerge. First, adopt a developmental and narrative lens. Treat career work as ongoing identity negotiation, attending to history, life themes, and co-constructed meaning. Second, take context and systemic barriers seriously. Assess the structural constraints on a client's options, and resist pathologizing indecision that is a rational response to a constrained situation. Third, attend to meaning-making and calling by exploring vocational purpose through the transcendent summons, meaningful contribution, and pro-social motivation. And fourth, practice in a culturally responsive way that honors collectivistic values, family obligation, racial and ethnic identity, and indigenous ways of knowing. These are not separate tasks. They are woven together in every session. Let me make the developmental and narrative lens concrete. Savickas' career construction interview gives us a clear clinical tool, organized around 5 domains: role models, favorite magazines or websites, favorite stories, personal mottos, and early recollections. The resulting life portrait becomes a compass for career decisions, especially during transitions when older identity anchors no longer hold. To support meaning-making through calling, Dick and colleagues suggest we explore whether clients feel drawn to work by something beyond self-interest, whether they find the work meaningful, and whether they are motivated by pro-social goals. Clients with a strong calling benefit from job crafting and intentional role design. Clients without one benefit from values clarification, strengths exploration, and reflection on the contribution they hope to make. Meaning-making is a fundamental human need we can support in every client. It is worth grounding all of this in the empirical record. A comprehensive search across more than 170 million research papers, using Consensus, Semantic Scholar, and PubMed, yielded millions of candidate studies. After multi-phase filtering, 50 papers met the inclusion criteria, and 100% of them affirm that career development is a lifelong, identity-driven, and meaning-making process. The convergence is striking. Lifelong cycles are supported by classic theory and robust longitudinal evidence. Identity sits at the center of widely adopted narrative theories. Meaning-making builds resilience, agency, and purpose. And culture shapes trajectories in nuanced ways. The themes we have discussed are not idiosyncratic. They reflect a genuine scholarly consensus. No honest review is complete without identifying what we do not yet know. The research gaps matrix on this slide maps coverage across populations and topics, and the empty cells tell the story. We see clear gaps in narrative interventions for multicultural populations and in cultural and ethnic influences for midlife adults. 3 open questions deserve your attention as emerging scholars and counselors in training. How do digital platforms influence narrative-based career interventions, given how quickly those tools are spreading? What are the long-term cross-cultural effects of life design interventions, since most studies are short-term or single-culture? And how does meaning-making mediate between adversity, such as migration, and well-being? Clarifying that mechanism could direct support to the people who need it most. These gaps are an invitation. Let me bring us back to where we began. Career development is among the most consequential developmental processes of human life. It shapes not only occupational outcomes, but identity, meaning, well-being, and contribution across the entire lifespan. As effective counselors, we hold the individual and the context together. We attend to the developmental stage and transition, explore vocational identity and narrative coherence, support meaning and purpose, and name the structural forces that constrain or enable a client's working life. The field will keep evolving, with artificial intelligence, the gig economy, and global displacement demanding fresh thinking. What remains constant is the human need to find work that is meaningful, expressive of identity, and worthy of a life's investment. Supporting that need is the heart of our work. These are selected references organized by theme, from foundational theory through career construction, identity and meaning, and adaptability and transitions. Thank you for your attention, and I look forward to our discussion.